Okay. So somebody was there. Leah.
I'm going to go off camera now.
All right, fine. Okay, that's that done. Now where are we? Back to the Zoom. Okay. All right. Hi, Leah. Great. So we're just about starting now. So let's just start off with our tefillah. Here we go.
Sarah is here too.
Sorry?
Sarah is here too, with me.
Oh. Great. Lovely. Okay, wonderful. All right, so here we go. We'll start off with our tefillah. Am I showing it? I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. I've forgotten. Share screen. There we go. Right, that's good. All right. Okay. ריבון עולמים ואדוני אדונים, אב הרחמן והסליחות, מודים אנחנו לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, בקידה ובהשתחוויה, שקרבתנו לתורתך ולעבודתך עבודת הקודש, ונתת לנו חלק בסודות תורתך הקדושה, מה אנו ומה חיינו, אשר עשית עמנו חסד גדול כזה. על כן, אנחנו מפילים תחנוננו לפניך, שתמחור ותסלח לכל חטאותינו ועוונותינו, והיו עוונותינו מבדילים בינינו לבינך, וכן יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, שתכונן את לבבינו לראותך ולבעתך, תקשיב אוזניך לדברינו אלה, ותפתח לבבינו הראל בסודות תורתך, ויהיה לימודנו זה נחת רוח לפני כיסא כבודך כרך ניחוח, ותציל עלינו, אור מקור נשמתנו, בכל בחינתנו, שיתנוצצו ניצוצות עבודך הקדושים, אשר על ידם גלית את דבריך אלה בעולם, וזכותם, וזכות אבותם, וזכות תורתם ותמימותם וקדושתם, אמוד לנו לבן מקשר בדברים אלו, ובזכותם תראה עינינו במה שאנו לומדים, כמאמר נעים זמירות ישראל, גל עיניי והביט הנפלאות מתורתך, כי אדוני תן חוכמה מפיו דעת ותבונה, יהיו לרצון עמי פי, והגון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. Amen. Can you run? Okay, great. So I'm going to have a little look at Yom Kippur today, which is a bit tricky, you know, because the more I understand about Yom Kippur, the more I realize I don't understand about Yom Kippur. And each year I sort of like get another layer of understanding, another thread adds into the tapestry. But I have to confess that my understanding is far from complete. It really is. It's sort of like each time I learn something else. So I'm going to start off with the very basics, which is the Mishnah of Yom Kippur. 1 second, let's see if I can just find it. There it is. And I need to change the screen. Okay. This is somewhere in Mishnah Yoma, near the beginning. I forgot to write the precise reference. One who says, Echtav ashuv, I will sin and I will repent. I will sin and I will repent. Ein masbikin biado lasot tshuva. You're not going to be able to do tshuva that way. In other words, you can't sin with the idea that, okay, I'll do the sin now, then I'll repent and it'll all be okay. All right. Or somebody who says, I'm going to sin, but not worry about it because Yom Kippur was coming and I can just sort of like deal with it then, or Yom Kippur will deal with it for me. No, that's not going to work. Ein Yom Kippur mechaper. In other words, what is this telling us? It's telling us there's conscious work involved. All right. So it's not an Yom Kippur is not an automatic Kapparah point. Okay. So we've got to have, there is there is our work involved as well. All right. So we've got to be participant in this. On the other hand, all right, the idea that there is Kapparah on Yom Kippur is a very strong idea. And we also need to understand what Kapparah actually is. It's not always easy to figure out what is Kapparah. I'm going to look at that in a minute. Averot shebein adam l'makom Yom Kippurim mechaper. So iniquities, sins, whatever that we've done between man and God, Yom Kippur mechaper. Shebein adam l'chavero ein Yom Kippurim mechaper ad sheyotzeh chavero. The ones which are between man and his fellow man, the Yom Kippur will deal with it, but you've got to appease your fellow first. Okay? So again, there's this idea that Yom Kippur is got a power to it, but it's also got to have our input. Et ze darash Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Mikol chatotechem lifnei Hashem titaru. From all your sins before God, you should be purified. Averot sheben adam lamakom Yom Kippurim mechaper. The iniquities between, or transgressions between a person and God, Yom Kippur will handle, will mechaper. Averot sheben adam lachavero. But transgressions between a person and his friend, his companion, his neighbor, somebody in his household, his relative, his enemy, anyone, okay? Yom Kippur does not deal with and mechaper until he has appeased his fellow. Amar Rabbi Akiva said, Ashrechem Yisrael, happy you are.
Sorry, Yedida, can I just ask you something?
Yeah.
What does this mikaper?
Mechaper, make atonement for.
Atonement for. Okay, thank you.
Right. But that's exactly the question. What does Kapparah mean? What does atonement mean? Okay, these are words which we talk about every single year, and I don't know if I really ever understood them, to be honest. What is Kapparah actually? What is it? Okay, so we're going to look at that question. What actually is Kapparah? What is it? Okay, here we get the first clue. Rabbi, so your question, Nicole, was bang on, as it usually is, I have to say. Rabbi Akiva said, Ashrechem Yisrael, happy are you, Israel, lifnei mi atem metaharim, who are getting purified. Here's a clue, okay? Yom Kippur has something to do with getting purified, okay? Umima taheretchem, who's the one who's cleaning you, purifying you? Avichem shebashamayim, your Father who is in heaven. Shne'emav zarakti alechem mayim tahorim utahaltem, and I will sprinkle over you pure water, and you will be pure. V'omer, and he also says in Jeremiah, Mikveh Yisrael Hashem, God is the mikveh of Israel. Okay, you can translate it as the hope of Israel. But you can also say it literally as the mikveh, okay, where we get purified, okay? Ma mikveh mataheret tameim, just as a mikveh purifies those who are unclean, af hakodesh baruch hu mataheret Israel. So the Holy Blessed One purifies Israel. So what do we learn from this mission? We actually learn quite a lot. We learn that Kapparah, atonement, has something to do with purification. Okay, to get purified. Now, we found out that although the day itself has a tremendous power, but it's still got to have conscious work put in by us, especially when we're talking about between man and his fellow man, okay? And also between us and God. We can't just sort of take it for granted. We can't just sort of say, okay, I'll do this sin right now, and Yom Kippur will take care of it for me. All right. So we've got to have some input from ourselves as well. So let's go back for a moment to look at this whole idea of what is Kapparah. So we're going to go back to the fundamental archetypal sin, okay, which gives us how to do Shuva also. And of course, we're talking about the sin of the golden calf. Okay, so Moses, we received the Torah on Mount Sinai. Moses goes up to Mount Sinai and receives the Torah. And that's the first 40 days that he's up there on the mountain receiving the Torah for us. And then he comes down on the 17th of Tammuz. Okay, and what does he see? He sees the children of Israel worshipping the golden calf. At least actually it was the what do you call it, the Erev Rav, the hangers-on. Nevertheless, the children of Israel didn't protest, and for this they were definitely part of the sin of the golden calf. So you have the sin of the golden calf. Okay, so Moses goes up again on the mountain, and for the next 40 days he pleads for the people, and God forgives them. So if we've already had the forgiveness, okay, what is the month of Elul, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur all about? And the answer is like this, that even though we are sorry for having done something, okay, nevertheless, the sin itself leaves a memory, leaves an impression on us, on the soul, like everything we do. Everything has a memory. We do something, we have a memory, and even if it's gone into the subconscious or the unconscious or whatever, it's still there, and it leaves an impression on us. Okay, and it's that we have to, that we work to undo, to get rid of during the month of Elul and the 10 days of Shuva, and finally we get to what's called Kapparah, atonement, on Yom Kippur, when you can really say we come to at-one-ment, okay? We come to being one with God again. We come back to the pristine, pure, essential self that we were before anything of it all ever happened, okay? And that's what Yom Kippur is actually about, which is really, very different. I never understood this before, I have to tell you. So this is what Yom Kippur is actually about. It's actually to remove the negative impressions from the soul of the negative stuff that we've done during the year. Okay. So it's not that there's different stages. There's slicha, kapparah, and mechila. And I don't actually know, the Rabbi Ashlag, I think, wrote an article on that, but I can't remember it too well. But there's different stages. But anyhow, the idea is to actually release these impressions that the sin has made on us. And that's the idea of the purification. Okay? Now, is that okay with everybody?
So we're doing that with our prayers. We're doing it with the slaughtering of the chicken. What is it? Is it that's removing the stains from our soul?
Well, probably it's the prayers, and especially the confessions. Okay. Now, the issue of confession, let's just look at this Shemati, Rachel, and then we'll go into your question, okay? Yes. This actually explains what we're going to, what I want to bring now, which is, yeah, it's some of it answers your question, okay? So I need to change, how do I do this? Change the screen. No, wait a minute. Yes. Oh dear. Oh, right. Okay. Share screen. That's right. That's the one I want. All right. Can you see that? It's a small piece from Rabbi Ashlag, and it's one of his talks that he gave about Yom Kippur. It's quite small. I mean, in the sense that it's not got many words, but it's super concentrated. So we'll take it very slowly. Inyan Kapparat avonot kav yamin v'kav smol. The issue of Kapparat avonot, atonement of sins. Now, Kapparah, like we say, is to remove the impression made by the sin. Now, how can that actually happen? Hu al yedei gilui or hachochma. It's from, you actually have to have a very big light of God present for that to happen. So the first answer to your question, Rochelle, is the day itself. This period of time from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur is a time in which very great light of God is present in the world. And if you remember, we looked at this in the Machzah last time in the prayers. We looked at the word uvachein, okay, which is, we've got these hints at in the Amidah of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We have a very different Amidah. We have these 4 levels of uvachein, okay, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and then David. And these are telling us that the presence of redemption, the light of redemption is present. This great light of Chokhmah is present in the world, okay? And you actually need this great light of Chokhmah in order to correct the sins, because you can even get that arrogant acts can become like merits. Now, how can that happen? Because even the worst actions that we do can, in fact, produce vessels for the light of God, because it's only when we become cognizant of them and we become aware of how separate we've become from God through them, okay, do we realize how much we need God. And then through that, they become vessels with which to receive the light of God. And so first of all, the presence of the light of God is very strong at this time. You have the order Chokhmah is present, okay? This is the issue of why we do confession, okay? Because when we confess what we've done, when we're cognizant of whatever negative action we've done, and we say it between ourselves and God, okay, then that itself is a vessel with which to be able to receive the light of God inside the person. Okay, the light of God is not just, out there somewhere. It's we have to actually feel that God is in us. And that can only be when we realize how much we need him. Okay, and that's when we sort of become aware of what we've done. So another aspect is first the day itself, because it's the tremendous light that's present. And the second thing is through the confessions. Now, Rabbi Gottlieb writes like this: through the suffering that a person has when he can feel his avonot, and avon is really a distortion, isn't it? It's the word avon comes from the word ivut, meaning to distort. And when we've done a sin, there's different categories. There's a chet, which is sort of like we sort of miss the mark. There's an avon, which is when the sin has become a bit more habitual. It actually causes us to have a distortion in perception. All right. And this is what we need to get clean from. So because of his suffering that we feel, emotional suffering that we feel, because of distortions in our perception and the distortion of our acts that we've done, Mamshich or Galut Hashem, he can actually bring the light of revelation of God to us, which is called the light of Chokhmah, in order that a person is able to overcome his sins and correct them. Nimtza, in other words, kama shesh yoter avonot, yesh lo yoter kelim l'hamshachat or chokhmah. The more sins he has, the more vessels he has for bringing the light of Chokhmah. It doesn't mean to say that a person needs to go and do sins so that he can bring the light of Chokhmah. No, we know that already from the Mishnah. That's not what he means. What he means is it's worth doing that self-accounting, because the more we can do it and the more deeply we can do it and the more accurately we can do it and the more we can sort of get not only to what we've done, but the root of why we've done it. Okay, the more we will be able to feel the light of God within us. Okay. That's what it's saying here. And on this it says, on those days, the sin of the iniquity of Israel will be looked for and it won't be there. That's from Jeremiah. Because for every sin that he's forgiven, it can only be forbidden through this great light, which comes through on Yom Kippur, okay, which can absolutely has the power to forgive the sins. Therefore, the tzaddikim looked inside themselves to find any aspect of distortion that they had, in order to bring the light of Chokhmah present to them. Okay, so that the real essence of what we're doing is actually doing Shuva, is actually through confession, through discovering what we've done. Chibuk HaSmon. Now, the great light is present, and the vessels with bringing it are the vessels of receiving. Okay. Nevertheless, because these great vessels are present, there's also the danger of receiving for ourselves alone. Whenever we have the vessels of the great vessels of the order Chokhmah that's receiving, the vessels of receiving have to be present. Otherwise, we've got no vessels with which to receive it. Nevertheless, there is a danger that we would receive for ourselves alone. Okay, which is the reason why on Yom Kippur, we don't receive anything. That's why we don't eat and we don't drink and we don't bathe and we don't get together with our partner, and we don't wear shoes, okay? So that we're not receiving anything, because when this great light comes, if we were in any aspect receiving, okay, there would be a danger, a big danger of receiving for ourselves alone and receiving this great big light for ourselves alone. This is called the Kitruka Satan. This is why this whole idea of the Satan. Satan isn't anybody out there. The Satan is ourselves, is our will to receive for ourselves alone. Okay, so because this great light is present, then that's why on Yom Kippur, we refrain from receiving anything. Okay, so we're not going to receive any of it for ourselves alone. And we're only going to be giving. We're in the aspect of giving all of Yom Kippur. Okay, so Chibuk HaSmol, the embrace of the left-hand line, okay, so it comes to us in order to forgive us and in order to deal with do the cleaning us from the sins. It has to come, okay. Nevertheless, we have to be very clear and only use it for the sake of giving, which is why we don't receive anything on Yom Kippur. Okay, so the vessels are bringing this great big light. And it says here that on every single day of the 10 days of penitence, which start with Rosh Hashanah and finish with Yom Kippur, you get one aspect of the 10 Sfirot of this great light, which is called the left-hand line. And on Yom Kippur, that's when the light and the vessel meet and become one. All right. And that was, the whole service in the temple, whole temple service was very much about this great big light. And you have the two he-goats, for example, Se'ir Hashem or Se'ir Azazel. Let's see what time we've got. We can go into that at all. Okay. That's the bit I wanted to share from this article. Ashlag, did that help a bit?
Yes, but it brings to mind another question.
That's okay.
What is the seed level of Yom Kippur? Like, how do we know this light is available like this? Like, what's the seed level?
What's the what? Sorry, the seed level?
Yeah, like, where did it begin? Like, going back in time, we know Rosh Hashanah in relationship to Adam and Eve. But what is Yom Kippur? What happened on Yom Kippur that all that light is available? All that light.
I see. Okay, that's a very good question. Right. So what happened on Yom Kippur was that this was the day, on the first day of Elul, God told Moses, go up again on the mountain and hew out 2 new tablets of stone. Okay, so he did. And during the month of Elul, God wrote on those, or Moses wrote down on the 2 tablets of stone, the 2 new tablets. And he came back down carrying the 2 new tablets of stone on Yom Kippur. That was the complete, and it wasn't just forgiveness. It was that the love between God and Israel was as if nothing had happened, or it had even got stronger. It was a moment of, it was complete oneness again. It wasn't just like, okay, I forgive you, but it wasn't that. It was back with complete, that Kapparah had happened, that complete unity again had happened. It's like Israel regained its former purity. Okay. Right. Rabbi Gottlieb wrote an article here which I thought was very helpful. Also in dealing with what is slichot, okay? Because in the prayers on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, also during this week, we've got the issue of slichot. What are slichot and what's their purpose? And he writes like this, and I'll just sort of translate, okay? The will of the Creator is that we should feel him. And in this, we can attain tremendous joy. And that's actually what he desires, to give goodness to the created beings. But in fact, he is hidden from us and we cannot feel him. And the question is, what stops us from feeling him? The purpose of the month of Tishrei is to uncover the evil within us, to expose it through the slichot, the 10 days of Shuva, or 10 days of penitence, in order that when we've dealt with the evil and we've corrected it, then all will be able to come into the human being all the goodness which we find in Sukkot and Simchat Torah, all the love of God which becomes so obvious to us in those wonderful festivals. And this is from the aspect of leave off the evil, sur meira, vasei tov, and do good. So he says the purpose is not to focus on the evil for the sake of the evil, but in order to focus on the evil only because it's a vessel with which to attain the good. Okay? The more that the evil disturbs us and bothers us in our connection with God, the more we will demand the good. Because the evil is actually the vessel with which to receive the good, because the evil develops in us longing and desire to attain the good. Because when we become aware of it, we feel so ashamed, we feel so guilty, we feel so lousy, we feel so miserable, okay, that we don't want it. And actually that is the longing that we want for the good. It's just sort of like, it's like the shadow of wanting the good. Do you see what I'm saying? We want the good, and the more, and because we work in opposites, the more we can feel dismay at the distance that we are from God, the more we begin to long for God and want the good. So that's why we're doing this work. And we say that it's in your power to grow and strengthen everybody. We need to believe that it's in God's power to grow, help us grow, and to strengthen us. Our prayer tends to be weak because we don't know how to concentrate on it. I don't mean concentrate on the actual words in the book. We all lose concentration. I mean, hopefully we will be able to concentrate a bit, but we all lose concentration in the, it's very long, the prayers, okay? But I mean the inner prayer. When we're talking about the prayers in the book, they are very useful, okay? And we'll look at that in a minute. But what it means by prayer, it means either our own individual silent prayer that we make from within ourselves, the prayer of our heart, or when we join together with our heart with the prayers in the book, and we can do that, okay? The more we go into it, the more we find that they are in fact talking to us. And we find that when we start listening to them, they begin to mean something to us. And then we join together with them, okay? But just saying words, just lots of words without any reference points with ourselves, that's not going to do it, okay? So we need to find that place of prayer within us. And he says here, there's a reality, a godly reality, which wants to give us goodness and wants to strengthen us. And we need to take this into consideration. that it's in God's power to make an end of all our troubles completely and to bring us to a situation of faith and love of our fellow man in a complete way. And this is not just a legend, it is real reality. These festivals and the slichot of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the 10 days of penitence, their purpose is not to judge a person, to make him frightened and depressed, because God loves us and wants to reveal to us his light. But since the light cannot come if there's no desire for it, we need to find that desire. And the vessel is the need. And therefore, when we expose the evil, and the more we need forgiveness, okay, and that light can actually come and bring us that forgiveness that we're looking for. It's like a husband who forgives his wife, or a wife who forgives her husband. And this brings a good relationship with them and a good feeling in their heart. And this is a real feeling, just as sins can be forgiven. Now he says, well, how do we discover the evil? Which was also Rochelle's question. We talked about confession. We talked about prayer. We talked about the light on that day. Rav Gottlieb adds another dimension by increasing the good. First, between a man and his friend. Okay. We need to believe that in the other person there is good. We need to imagine the divine soul that there is in the other person. We need to accept the other one just the way he is, to humble oneself to the other one, to give in to the other one, to try and find a way to give the other one pleasure. And these matters express themselves, first of all, in just keeping the simple halachot rules, like not speaking Lashon Hara, giving honor to one's husband, or the husband gives honor to his wife, and so on and so forth. Working on our attributes everywhere we are, whether in shul or whether in the home, between ourselves and our children, in our workplace, in the supermarket, in the community, in the army, everywhere. And when we go on this new route, we begin to see how hard it is for us. We begin to see how much our ego opposes humbling itself, how much it opposes giving unconditionally to the other person, putting the other person first above ourselves. We might even feel hatred to the other person, or pride, or arrogance. We might not suffer the other guy or really dislike him. We might not encourage them. And through this work that we're trying to do to improve our relationships between one and the next person, then we can discover our egoism. We can discover our will to receive for ourselves alone, which is actually the essence of all the evil that there is. Okay, if you want to have one phrase which describes the will to receive for the evil, then it's the will to receive for ourselves alone. And when we discover that, then we get that vessel for the good. Okay, that's the vessel for the forgiveness of sins, the vessel with which we can again become one with God, which is what we're looking for in Yom Kippur. And then, of course, we've got the mitzvot, which are between, or the work between man, Adam, the human being, and God. By increasing the good, in other words, by increasing our faith in God, and also working on not doing the things which are forbidden. Okay, and this needs, first of all, to express itself by keeping the halacha, by keeping the basic laws, also in working on our attributes. A person who believes in God can't just do what he likes. he can't just, he wrote here, he can't just look at whatever's forbidden to look at in the street. He can't just do what he likes, whether it's in kashrut or on Shabbat. These are ideas that we believe in the Torah, in God and in the Torah and the sages who taught us the Torah. Okay, so we need to uphold what they've decreed. And these ideas of having faith and wanting to give to God needs, first of all, to express itself by carrying out the halacha, and then also in working on ourselves. And this work is daily, okay? And it needs to bring through that fact a person begins to know himself better. He begins to understand himself better. He understands what his capabilities are and where he's liable to fall down. He begins to recognize his own egoism. And then he can come to the Creator asking for forgiveness, and with slichot and asking for forgiveness, and which means that we're asking from the Creator to give us his light, okay, according to give, to illuminate a person with his faith, that we need to have faith in God. And then a person can see how he becomes better. In general, it's hard for a person to see this about himself, but if we have a partner, they can usually tell us, okay? In general, if a person can't feel the evil within himself, then he can't ask forgiveness, because he can't, if he's unconscious in his actions, he can't ask forgiveness. He doesn't see that he's hurt somebody else, or he can't ask forgiveness of God. And then Rav Gottlieb says, well, then we need to ask forgiveness on the fact that we don't know what we need to ask forgiveness for. But I think actually that the Siddur here, the Machzor, with a list of confessions is actually helpful. Now, I am very much aware that these confessions are couched in very archaic language, and it's very difficult to know what they actually mean. So I found a Machzor which actually explains what they are. Unfortunately, I don't have one in English. I don't know, does anybody here have a Machzor which has got the explanation of what the confessions mean in English? No. Well, nobody said yes, so I assume it's no.
I mean, I have the art scroll, Machzor.
And do they actually, when you have,
I don't know about the explanation, it's just got a translation. I'm sure. Let me just see how much they actually explain.
All right. Because what I did do, let's see if I can find it. Oh. I found here.
I don't know how much vowels. I mean, it's just got small explanations, but it's not. Where did it come?
Well, I'll share for a minute what I've got here, and you can tell me if this is helpful at all. All right, I found this very useful. Not all of them are helpful, but quite a few of them are. Ashamnu, for example, doesn't really help. Agadnu means we betrayed. Okay, so here it says that God gives us always good, and He gives us life, and He gives us, the wherewithal to eat with, to function, but we give back evil instead of good. Okay, Gazalnu means to be robbed. We took something from our companion without his consent. Dibalnu dofi. We spoke badly. We spoke negatively, in somebody's denigration either of a person or of God. Another explanation is that we said one thing with our heart and another thing with our mouth. Well, that's very common, isn't it? That we sort of tell white lies and we, we're not quite honest. Lashon hara. Okay, well, that's Lashon hara. We know what Lashon hara is. Lashon hara is saying something which is true about somebody, but saying it with a bad intention. Okay. My daughter says that it's just better not to say anything about anybody at all, and we'll all be all right. And I think she has a point there, to be honest. Hevinu, we have distorted what is straight, okay, or caused somebody else to make some sort of distortion because we were negligent with them, or somehow, led them off the path. Hilshanu, we blamed one who's actually righteous. Or we've caused others to do something wicked. Zadnu, we've been arrogant. We sinned with arrogance, or we were hard-hearted. Okay. Hamasnu, we forced somebody to sell us something which he didn't want, or that we forced somebody to buy something which he didn't really want. Tafalnu sheket umilma, we kind of like put the blame on our companions when it wasn't their fault. We gave bad advice, okay, in order to cause a person to look bad, or in order for ourselves to profit. Kizavnu, people believed in us and we didn't fulfill our promises. Ka'asnu, we got angry. That's straightforward. Latsnu, we were cynical. Maradnu, we rebelled. What does that mean? We did a sin or transgression, even though we didn't have a particular desire for it. Our Yetzer Hara wasn't operative at the time, but we didn't believe in it as a mitzvah. Marinu Dvarecha, we rebelled against your Torah. That's straightforward. Niatznu, we despised. We either annoyed God or we denigrated his name. Niafnu, that's to do with sexual immorality. Saralnu, we turned away from serving God. Avinu, we did a transgression on purpose because we wanted to supply our appetites, our wills to receive for ourselves alone. Pashanu, we transgressed. Pagamnu, we made a defect. Saralnu, it's kind of like to ambush somebody. We tripped somebody up in some way. We gave sorrow to our father and mother. Kishinu Oref, when we were punished and something negative happened to us, we didn't look to see why we need to do tshuva. We put the what's happened on some sort of accident or chance, or said it was due to this or that, and we didn't say it came from God. Rashanu, we did deeds through which we can be called wicked people. For example, somebody who raises his hand against his fellow, or thieves. Shichatnu, that is to do with illicit sexual relationships. tiavnu. We did bad deeds, which a person calls abominations. Ta'inu. We didn't go in the straight way according to the Torah. And so therefore, as the sages have said, one who comes to be unclean, they allow that to happen. So we went in the wrong way and we didn't do tshuva on it. You allowed us to go on our free choice, but we've wandered away. All right, so this is the explanation of the short ones. Did that help?
But Yedida,
Yeah,
it's all going from the Aleph through from Aleph to Tet.
that's right.
Do you think so? They've got to find words that match the different letters,
Well,
or they've done it in just that order.
it's always Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet. I mean,
Yeah.
there is an inner meaning to that. The Zohar tells us that the Aleph base are the letters of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are actually vessels for the light of God. And so when we say Aleph, it's like receiving the light, okay? And then there is, if for example, in the Al-Khaits, which is the longer versions, okay, there's some Al-Khaits which begin Aleph base, that's the first lot. And then there's ones which go back the other way. Where are we? Yes, here we go. So first they have the vidui. It says in the direct Aleph Beis Gimel Daled Hey Vav, that way. Then you have vidui going back the other way, okay, which is Or Chozel, which is returning the light back. And then it goes, I think, back down the straight way again. There is inner meanings to this. Yeah. So Rabbi Ashlag wrote about this, and he wrote like this. Let's go back a moment to, where was it? Here. Okay. In Yom Shabbat Shuva, the issue of Shabbat Shuva, why do we call this coming Shabbat, Shabbat Shuva, the Shabbat of repentance? Because on Yom Kippur, we say all these lists of confessions, al-Chait. And anybody who looks at these al-Chaits can't find his place, he can't find any relevance to himself in them, in at least 60% of them. And maybe in 40%, he might be able to find some sort of doubt that maybe he can find something which relates to him. But for sure, in 60%, he can't find any aspect of himself there at all. However, with the skula, with the virtue of Shabbat, with the light of Shabbat, it comes the ability that will shine on the person, that he will be able to find himself, like it's relevant to him, in all 100% of all of these al-Chaits. And he finds that this is absolutely for himself, not for anybody else. Like he can really feel them inside himself. They're really talking to him. But the truth is that without the great light of God, we don't feel it. Most of the time, we are pretty insulated from ourselves. It's like we're wandering around the whole year with this sort of insulation, not actually realizing what damage we're doing. So much of the al-Chaits are very sensitive, especially the long ones. We can look at a couple of those before we go. They're very, very sensitive. and we're not even aware of doing them. So it's actually a great blessing that this great light comes at this time, that we can actually see where we are. Okay. So this is what happens. It says through this great light, which is now, and also through the light of Shabbat, we get to feel that they're actually speaking to us. And without the light of God, we can't feel it. We can't relate to it. And therefore, we call this Shabbat, Shabbat Shuva, because this Shabbat is so useful for Shuva, because we're able to feel the sin through the light of Shabbat. Because we need to acknowledge the sin, and then we're able to ask forgiveness for it. But if a person says this phrase, al chait, and he can't feel the sin, what sort of acknowledgement is that? Because in his heart, he's saying, this has got no connection with me. I didn't do it. And what he says with his mouth, and his heart isn't there, that's not worth very much. Okay? So he's saying to actually be able to feel that this really is speaking to us is something very precious. So I want to go back one more time. I was really struck one year. Where am I? Why can't I see what I'm looking for? 1 second. This one. Where are we? There. That's the bit we want. I started to look at these al-chaitz, not just at the Ashamnu Bagadnus, but also at the al-chaitz. I was really impressed about how many of them are dealing between a man and his fellow. Oh, there's stuff in the chat. 1 second. Oh, okay, great. Thanks. Look. By Rabbi Twersky. Oh, he's going to be helpful. Wonderful. Thanks, Devorah. All right. So we'll just have a look at a couple of these before we go. The sin, for the sin that we did for you by compulsion. In other words, that we did a mitzvah by just compelling ourselves without joy. Okay, I can relate to that one. For the sin that we sinned before you without knowledge, that we didn't choose to understand what we're doing. It goes on it, all sorts of stuff here. Here, the sin that we sinned before you by trying to govern others, trying to have power over others, force others to do our will, dominate. Yeah, or the sin that we sinned before you by, not using nice language, nibul peh, using abusive language or language which is inappropriate. The sin that we sinned before you with the Yetzer Hara, that we sort of enticed our own Yetzer Hara by ourselves. Okay. The more you should go into these, the more they actually do make sense. The sin that we sinned before you with by our lips, because we prayed just from our mouths outwards without trying to understand what we were or intend what we were saying. For the sin that we sin before you in private, which in other words, we're ashamed of what we're doing from other people, but we're not ashamed from God. by the fact that we're proud. Okay, haughty eyes just means that we're being proud. Okay, and if we're proud, there's no place for God in our lives. On the sin that we sin before you by we trying to pitchon peh means opening the mouth, but what it really means here, we try to justify ourselves inappropriately, or we just simply acknowledge that we did wrong, you know. A person who sinned before you by closing his hand. Okay, he was being mean and didn't give to tzedakah. The sin that we sin before you through our free will without compulsion. There's lots of different things here. The sin that we sin before you with gossip. What's gossip? When you hear one thing and you go and tell somebody else, and even though it's true, it causes destruction in the world. Okay. So the more we go into
Yedida,
yeah.
who wrote these? Who wrote this?
That's a very good question. The tefillot are very ancient, and they date from the time of the beginning of the Second Temple, and they were written by the men of the Great Assembly. Now they're Anshekenes Tagdola, and these were people of such high spiritual caliber. They're all written and composed. These ones, which form the core prayers, were all written and composed by men who absolutely knew the sfirot and the higher worlds and the relationship between the words and the higher worlds. These are like it's all to do with sfirot and things. I mean, there's a very, very fascinating book by Rabbi Chaim Vital, called Pre-Eitz Chaim. Now, I've got the book, I can't understand a word. It's so complicated, but it shows that all these core prayers that we have, it shows, which sfira belongs to which letter or word of the prayer, which combinations of sfirot, and it's just incredible. But this all comes from the men of the Great Assembly. Yeah, definitely. The slichot, some of not the slichot, but there's also inside the prayers there's some sort of poems. You know what I mean? That you get these sort of, they're called piyutim. Now some of those are much later. For example, Unatana Tokef, which is one that I really don't like, is actually a very late one, and it doesn't appear in the Sephardi tradition, for example. It's from Rabbi Kilonimus or something. I can't remember. And then there are later ones, but they're not these ones which actually appear as part of the Amidah are ancient prayers. They really come from the time of the Second Temple, from the men of the Great Assembly. So they're all organized and they're organized to open up the pathways of our heart. Absolutely. So, yeah, I can send you this, but it's all in Hebrew. I don't have one in English. I would like to say that I would manage to translate this for you all by then, but most unlikely that I can try, but I don't know if it will happen. At least I can translate a few. Have a go at it anyhow. So see if we can get some of those in English. But Devorah, in that book that you mentioned in the chat with Rabbi Tversky, does he have the confessions, you know, sort of explanation of the confessions in English? Where's Devorah?
Sorry, my thing was doing a beach ball. Yeah, he goes through, I mean, it's not a super heavy explanations of everything. He goes through all the different sections and gives some explanations of kind of the meanings and intentions. I was trying to look through it a bit before I put it up to be sure it's kind of what you were wanting. He has I mean, it's just kind of a small square. It's 268 pages. So there's a number. But it's not a giant. I mean, it's paper size is shorter than a regular book.
Right.
So, look here. The confessions, let's see if he has that. You know, he goes through like the table of contents, the 10 days of repentance, Kol Nidre, Marav, Chakras, Mosaf, Mincha, Mila, meditations, and then each section has little topics underneath it, Yizkor, kneeling and prostrating. He explains. You know, if you go on Amazon, it may have like a little book. Sometimes they have like, you can look at the, you know, see inside the book. He also has one on Rosh Hashanah. There's also another one on Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
It's about the closest. I mean, I was trying to find something a few years ago that would go in and, you know, really explain why they're the way they are, why they're what we're doing, what it's saying, what's the purpose. So he does do that, but it's not a super, you know, scholar book. You know, it's really meant for regular people. So
yeah.
Not
okay.
Yeah. So
all right. So
somewhere I found where he was saying about, you know, the different height. So I can't find that right now. So.
Okay, great. So listen, so let's just sum up what we've done so far, because actually I think we did quite a lot. Okay, we looked at the Mishnah and we discovered that there's a power in the day, okay, because of it's the day in which Moses brought down the 2 tablets of stone. It's the day when God and the people of Israel become completely reunited again. And in order for that to happen, we have to have Kapparah. We have to clean up from the impression made by the sins on the soul, okay? Because we've done things, it's left an impression on us. And if we don't clean it up, we're liable to do it again. So one of the ways that we do it is through prayer, giving charity, trying to do good deeds in these 10 days, okay? And wanting to do good, and also discovering the evil so that we can feel how separated we've become, confess it just between ourselves and God, and that itself will bring a place in which we can heal with the light of God. Okay, that's what we discovered. And we looked at that, in fact, to uncover the places that we've, you know, the deep root causes of it, we actually need God's light to help us. And that's one of the reasons why these 10 days of penitence are so useful, because the light of God is very close right now, and the light of God is present, and it's shining on us and helping us to discover these unconscious causes of being separated from him and the distortions in our perception that have happened as a consequence. And one of the ways that we do that is through the slichot prayers, which we do, the penitential prayers, which contain a lot of vidui, confessions. And the confessions are organized from the men of the Great Assembly to help us open these channels, okay? And the more we can relate to them, okay, the more we'll be able to find within ourselves. And that we get through the light of God, which comes through on Shabbat Shuva. And also obviously by understanding what they're saying. So what I'll try and do, you know what, I will try and go through, even if I can't, when I translate, the reason why I'm a very slow translator, one of them is I'm a very bad typist. I mean, I really am bad. But if I say it out loud, it's not so bad. What I'll try to do then is in the next couple of days, I will just sort of make a recording of what they mean, okay, as far as I can. And then at least you'll have that. All right. And I'll post it on the WhatsApp.
So he has like 40 pages on vidui, going through each confession. That's what we're talking about.
Could you, oh wow, 40 pages?
Yeah, goes through he comments on each one, each confession.
Oh wow.
And,
So that is really useful then.
yeah, I think so, probably, yeah. And then there's, that's just the vidui. He goes through.
Devorah, is it possible for you to scan that for us, or is that too much work? It's 40 pages, it's quite a lot.
It's quite, just that's, yeah, you could probably do that.
Yeah, could you do that?
Yeah, I'll try. I'll give it a try. See.
Oh, that'd be great. See how you go.
Okay.
That'd be really helpful. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you, Yedida. That was very informative.
Oh, I'm glad.
Thank you, Yedidia. Shana tova, Chatima tova.
Shana tova.
And everybody.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Ktiva v'chatima for everybody.
Shalom.
Yeah, Shabbat shalom.
I mean, thank you, Yedida.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, take care,
Bye.
everyone. Bye then.
Thank you, Yedida.
You're
Bye-bye.
welcome.
Thank you. Bye.
Tova.
Shana tova, ktiva v'chatima tova, everyone.
Love you, Yedida.
Hi, sweetheart.
Hi,
Wait a
honey.
minute, let me just stop the recordings.